maybe you want to turn that into a career. Some people are like, I love video games and I don't want to mix the two because I don't want my work to become, everything that I do. Because some people play video games and then they go work in video games and then they go home and play video games and they get a little tired of that. So, for some people, it's not what they want, but for some, it is. So if that's you and you want to be involved in this space, there's a lot of different career options that are out there. Um, so we're going to start off real quick one. How many of you guys know who these folks are? And let me actually see if I can find a way to get this component here on my screen so that I can see some of the faces that do show up. Are you guys familiar? Okay, see, I see some hands. There we go. There we go. You guys know who the Fall Guys are. These guys are fun and honestly kind of neat groups of people that have created an amazing game. Let's see here. Boom. I'm going to move my screen over to here. Cool. Great. So yeah, I see a lot of hands. Excellent. So did you know that these guys are actually in London? Like these guys and gals actually work in London. They're right off the Thames and they actually developed this game here in the UK. So this is a great example of like a company that's like right here in town that has made like a really, really popular game that like all of you guys have raised your hands for and you guys know what they're about, right? I mean, I have the game. I've played it a bit, right? And I'm terrible at it. But they're really popular. It's really cool. And I bet some of you guys are wizards at it. So, for the video game industry, there's a lot of local opportunities and there's also opportunities like outside. And we'll go into a little bit more detail about that. With COVID-19, I'm sure that you guys have kind of seen a bunch of different games, right? Have you guys seen this one? Hands, yeah, I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, boom, boom, hands going up. Yeah, there we go. You guys know this because you guys have it on your phone. Like we're all playing it at different times, right? So Fall Guys is not something that you play on your phone, but Among Us very clearly is, and I'm sure that you guys have been like betraying your friends and throwing them down garbage chutes at home. So I know you guys are doing this. You guys are familiar with it. So the video game industry is really varied, right? You can play on console, you can play on mobile, and you guys can work across all these different things. There's new opportunities that exist beyond that. And there's things such as like AR video games, VR video games, and we'll get to that in a little bit as well. So today we're going to cover like 4 major things. The video games industry as a whole, like what's happening in it, what's going on. The second part is working in video games, like what kind of jobs exist and like what could you do? What elements are you interested in? And also for me to kind of understand what the rest of this content series is going to be like. So right now we have this workshop today. We got another workshop next week, and then we got to keep going, skipping over the holiday break, and then throwing in whatever sessions that you guys are interested in. So it's going to be really important to me to understand what it is that you guys want to learn about in video games. So if there's a specific thing that's happening and that you're like, hey, tell me about this, or go find someone in this space, that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to work for you these next few months to figure out what part of the video game industry you want to learn about, because I can go ask my friends, hey, do you know somebody in this place that can tell them about whatever? Maybe music in the video game industry, maybe working in mobile games specifically, right? So whatever side that you're interested in, you guys need to tell me, because there's no way I'm going to figure that out without you telling me, okay? So then
I was just going to say, we've got a few hands up here, but I don't know whether that's because people want to ask questions or whether it's just because your hands were up from before.
I think so it was from before.
Unmic yourself if you want to ask a question. If not, put your hand down.
Hello.
Oh, yeah, hi.
Yeah. Yeah, I got a question. What are AR video games? I've never.
So augmented reality. So have you guys ever played Pokemon Go? Pavel says yes with his hand. So Pokemon Go is essentially where you've got your game, you got your mobile phone, right? And you go outside and you aim it at the ground and you see like a Pokemon standing on the ground, right? From your camera phone. That's an augmented game. So that's an augmented reality video game. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Everything else, bud, or is your hand still up for something else? Gonna go with no then. All right. So from there, that we have also the section about the video game design competition. So specifically, like how do you win it? What are we looking for? And like what are the different things that you can like really kind of iterate upon to make your video game design document like the winning one. And then we'll answer questions. Boom. All right. So video game industry as a whole, guys, I'm sure that since you guys have been locked down at home, that unfortunately you've probably played a bunch of video games. I know I have because I'm a big freaking nerd and I've been playing a lot of video games at home. So I think that if you guys are familiar with this already, just some basic element, right? The video games industry is growing nonstop, right? This last quarter, like this last year, really, Microsoft, which makes the Xbox, right, had a record sales period, right? Meaning everybody's buying video games like nonstop, and you can see it over here in the U.S. video game sales, right? Over here it says 2020, boom, explosion, green bar. April, boom, May, boom, right? Everybody's at home, and they're all looking for fun things to do. So it needs more and more people to actually spend the time to create these things, because making a video game is really hard, honestly. Like, it is extremely painful. Like, in the last company that I was working at, we made the first design of the video game in 3 months, and then we completely threw it away. Like, we did not keep any of it. We completely threw it away, and we started from the ground zero and started making a new video game. And then we did it again after 8 months. We completely threw it away. Why? Because we were making some not perfect decisions, right? We make mistakes, we're human. And creating a video game is a lot about that, right? It's like making a business, it's making a product. It's a lot of effort, it's a lot of work. So some of you guys are familiar with Grand Theft Auto. It's one of the most successful video game franchises ever. It was actually made up in Scotland, right? So this is a UK video game right here. This is one of the most successful games in the world. And here you are. It's made right here at home. There are obviously a bunch of programs in the UK dedicated to helping people develop the skills necessary for it. So 35 million gamers. I mean, there's only 63 million people in the UK, or 66, right? So that's over half are playing video games right now. So clearly there's a job. You guys are all familiar with Nintendo, Sony, all these different names, right? It's pretty obvious there's a job market out there. And fortunately for you guys, the UK is an amazing market for it. So, hold on. Is there a slide missing here? Okay, no, good. So there's a whole bunch of different options for that. And inside the video game industry, there's a lot of variation of what you could be in terms of your career. So right here is just a small list of some of the video game roles that exist. So there's a video game designer who spends the time to actually create the story, create the narrative. That's a big element of what this video game design competition is about, is figuring out what is the kind of the creative idea that you come up with that defines your story. Now, it's important to note that, like, if you're a video game designer, you don't just work on one story your entire life, right? Like, usually that doesn't happen. I mean, even GTA, right, has different story writers and different game designers each time, because it's really hard for the same person necessarily to come up with a new way to improve the same story, right? So it's often a process of changing, of bringing in new blood, bringing in new ideas. And a video game designer will work across so many different stories in their lifetime. So I've got a friend who works on kids video games. He then moved on to racing video games, and then he worked on VR video games. And I think that's where he's at right now. So it's like, you go through all these different options in your life as a video game designer. Animator. An animator is someone who actually goes through the process of like creating the visuals, right? The movement on the video game. The coder, I mean, that's pretty straightforward. They're a developer, right? Someone's got to make the back-end logic that makes this work, because video games are computer code, right? So that's an option for you guys to look at as well. 3D designer. Now, like, if you look at most visuals, right, there's usually a 3D element to it in most video games these days. It's not just like a Paper Mario going across the screen, right? It's actually a character that's got depth, a little bit of personality, rounded shapes, sharp edges, all those kind of things. They make those things. And that's a specific job because it takes a lot of work to do that. Writers are almost similar to video game designer, but they actually can spend a lot of time just writing the story behind it, writing the narrative, writing the copy. So narrative is essentially the story that you tell people, right? So Lord of the Rings. I mean, Lord of the Rings is the story, but how do you make a game design out of that, right? If you're going to make Lord of the Rings into a video game, there's a whole other kind of approach to thinking about what do people do in the video game to be fun? Like, how is this an entertaining game? I'm sure you guys have played really boring games and said, you know what, I'm not going to do this anymore. And that's the problem, right? You want to get past that. You got to think of creative ways to get people hooked into your video game and say, wow, this is so much fun, right? You don't want to make people addicted. You want to make people have fun, because addiction is kind of a scary place in the video game world. Let's see, what else? Marketing, finance, and project managers, obviously musician. So marketing, finance, and project managers are the boring people like me, who are Honestly, I have a lot of fun doing my job, but for people when they think about the video game industry, they don't think that they're actually that fun because they don't think it's video games. Personally, I disagree. I really enjoy my job, honestly, and I had a great time working with the people, learning about the video game industry, and being part of it. So I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a second. But any questions about these types of jobs, just briefly, like you can think about your questions more so later on, and we're going to go into a session with several people who are in these jobs to tell you more about it specifically. So if you have a specific question about it, it might be better to wait until we have that person come in and talk. So we have, I'll tell you more who's going to come in later at the end. Okay. So if there are any general questions right now, hit me. All right, we're good. I'm going to keep going. So, my story for the video game world is a little bit different, right? I had mentioned that I was one of the quote unquote boring people. I worked in the video game industry as a finance guy. So working with the business to figure out how you make money, right? Because if you make a video game that isn't making money, you're going to have to figure out some kind of way to pay for it, right? Because developers and artists and animators and 3D designers, they don't work for free, right? None of you guys want to work for free, right? You guys want to be paid for your skills. So at the end of the day, you have to have somebody who's going to come in and actually tell you how to make this make money. And so that's the part of the industry that I work in. So the last company that I was at was a video game company specifically for little kids to help them learn stuff and to play just fun games and get educated on these things. It's a different slice of the video game industry, but I didn't come to it because I have any background in video games. I came to it because I had skills in finance. So if you're a person who maybe is not interested in making video games, there's definitely a career for you, right? There's definitely a career for you in video game industry as a whole, right? Because Nintendo, Sony, King, Mediatonic, the guys who make Fall Guys, all that, they all need people that are interested in kind of the broader issues of like, how do you sell the product? How do you sell the video game? How do you get more people playing your video game? How do you get more people paying for your video game? Because you guys have played freemium games, I'm sure, like on your mobile, right? You're always playing it. iPhone's got a lot of games that you can go on there, build a city, and then eventually it takes forever for you to get your upgrade on your building. And you're like, okay, I'll just pay them instead, right? That's the freemium model, right? So people are looking for those kind of mechanics to kind of find ways to make money, to get the game to be really popular and to get it out there. So if you are not necessarily sure that you want to work in that space, that's okay, right? You don't have to do the traditional coder job. You don't have to become that kind of person. You can do all kinds of different things in the video game industry. It's pretty much like anything else. It's like, right, if you're going to think about engineering, not everybody who works in a tech company is an engineer, right? So you have a lot of options if you want to think about different angles, or maybe if you want to talk to somebody in the marketing side of the video game world, we can go find somebody. If you want to go talk to somebody who maybe works in esports, right? That's a cool side of the video game industry that we have not fully kind of talked about yet. And esports is a really different place, right? The esports side of the equation is people playing video games professionally with people watching online, like Overwatch, League of Legends, Dota, all those different things you might find really interesting. If you're interested in esports, you need to let me know so that I can try to go find somebody who's in esports, okay? So that's a little bit about my side of the equation. It's not the true, I guess, the true video game designer guy, but you know, there are people for that. So if you're looking for jobs in the UK, there are a lot of different places that you can go. I mean, you guys see the map there and you can see the top 50 video game companies in the world. Ubisoft is just across the channel, right? You got Rockstar Games in the UK. You got EA Games in the UK. The Blizzard's got an office. Nintendo's got an office here. Square Enix has an office here. Naughty Dog has an office here. I mean, all these top companies that are huge, right? Like they're really big names that can give you really nice jobs in the fields that you're interested in. You can get a job at one of these places. And as you see on the map there on the left side, there's shops throughout the entirety of the UK. You can go all the way down to Cornwall. You can go all the way up into, you know, the middle of the mountains in Scotland. And there's a video game design company that is interested in trying to help people get something out there. So if you want to make a video game company, it's totally an option. I know some guys who started a video game company in the middle of Alabama, and Alabama sounds like a pretty kind of corny place to do it because it's like, sweet home Alabama. That's the kind of thing that happens there. So people are actually creating video games in like really obscure places. So don't let your location define where you work, right? Obviously, yeah, go ahead.
What would your dream company be to join in this list, or any company? What's your dream company?
Interesting. That's a great one, and I'll answer that at the end because I have a complicated answer for you. Okay. So all these different companies, they have their positives and negatives, right? Some of them work pretty intense hours, right? So to be fair, like working in the video game industry can be pretty challenging because there are some aggressive deadlines that you have to meet, right? Because when you're developing a video game, you're testing, you're changing, you're iterating, you're hoping that things are going to get better and that the game is more fun. Or maybe you're in the process of saying, hey, we're going to launch next week, and you discover this massive bug, right? That process requires that kind of you be on hands on deck. Now it's a great career for those that are very interested in it. But I actually don't work in the video game industry anymore, right? I actually work in startups as a whole. So this whole process of kind of like showing where you are in the video game world is something that's a really personal experience. For some people, they really like Nintendo because they believe it's got a culture of innovation, right? Some people really like working on at Rockstar because they just want to work on GTA, right? That's it. They don't want to work on anything else. They just want to work on Grand Theft Auto, and that's it, right? So some people are big Ubisoft fans, right, because of the Assassin's Creed series. Like there's a whole bunch of different stuff that's come out from them. And then obviously, if you're a Blizzard fan, some people like World of Warcraft and they're just diehards for that. So I think a dream company is very specific. I personally actually don't have a particular preference. I'm actually working a completely different space now, so it's kind of not the best example. But I know about the video game space from my last job. So video games is a short experience in my life, but that's why we're bringing in pros to tell you more about their specific jobs, because that's probably the more interesting side of the video game equation. So really quick, let's go through the game design competition rules because there's a lot of things that are going to happen. So the game design competition rules will be emailed to you. I have a PDF for it that tells you the different specific rules and how you should go about doing this. Joanne, I think we actually need to talk about the deadline because I think we talked about pushing it back and I have an old date on here. So at some point, maybe you just give me a shout and let me know what timeline works best for everybody. Okay. And we might actually push it back because we might get different speakers to come in just because you guys might have a specific section of the industry that you're interested in. So we can always push it back. We won't move it forward, right? So we'll make it easier for you guys. But the general idea is create a games design document. So you're asking what's a games design document? A games design document is dedicated to helping people understand what is the core mechanic of your video game that gets people excited, that makes them happy, that tells them the story behind the video game, that lets them understand the general layout of what's happening in this video game. And you can do a full narrative, like meaning, they were born in this city, and then you go through this mission, you complete this boss, you help these people, and then, the game's over. Or it can just be a simple one like Flappy Bird. I don't know if you guys ever play Flappy Bird, but all it is a bird. It goes up and down and dodges these little hills, right? These little pipes. That's Flappy Bird, right? That's the design document. It doesn't have to get super sophisticated. But the idea behind the competition is to evaluate what is the best games design document in terms of structure, game mechanic, concept art, and all these different elements that kind of bring together a complete picture of what your video game is, right? So if you've got an idea, adding in the music, art, and all those other things, it helps paint the picture of what the video game is, right? But it doesn't define whether or not it's a complete, comprehensive story. Tamid, go ahead, bud.
So is there a prize for second place?
Yeah. So we actually have several categories that we tend to award. So actually, Clara won one of them last year, best game mechanic, right? So we take out specific elements that we think are quite amazing. So the overall winner gets the grand prize. which we're working on. The second places and the different honorable mentions where they get the best game mechanic, best concept art, you get special attention as well. So don't worry, it's not just a one prize kind of thing. We encourage you to work with teammates, right? It's easy. They don't have to be in the school. They can be outside the school. If you got a brother or sister and they want to help you out, you're more than welcome to do it. Or if you just got a friend down the road and you think it's cool and they want to be part of it, they're more than welcome to work with you on it, and you can be together as a team. And once we finish up the video game education series, right, where we bring in people from all the different industries, we will set the deadline so that you guys can figure out, what time you get to build a well-rounded perspective on this, right? Actually, so it turns out I've already received notice from one of the companies that's supporting this, and that's Electric Gamebox, and they're doing the virtual reality video game, and this is actually kind of a slight augmented reality play as well. They are actually offering tickets to the winners of the competition. So that is one of the prizes already. So if you do win the competition, you get to go to the Electric Gamebox, try out their virtual reality video game setup, and it's here in London. So you get the chance to go there for free and play the video games and take some friends and that kind of stuff. So that is one of the prizes, and we're working on figuring out what you guys want. So last year, we tried to set up some time to do the work experience, but unfortunately, it was a bit of a challenge due to COVID. So yeah, that didn't work out as exactly as we had ideally planned. So this year, we've spent some time working on trying to connect mentors in advance so that we can get you guys the connections that you want for the winners as well. Part of the exciting thing about this video game design competition, and I think this is really important that you guys remember this, is that whatever you create in this games design document is something that goes into your portfolio. So when you go to apply for a games design job later on in life, you can take this document that you create here and show them, this is the work that I've done so far, right? And the exciting part is you're getting reviewed by professionals in industry, and I'll show you guys who those people are, and we'll come back to the winners in a second, right? So the games design judges are from actual companies that have like real big successful video games, right? So they've done things that you may not have heard about because the video game industry is huge, right? But they're all doing things that have employees, they got big teams, and they're working across a lot of different things. So these guys have all built very successful video games. They know what's going on. So you're able to take the document that you've created here today and say, hey, look, I've got this in my resume. I've got this in my portfolio. Take a look at me as someone who's fresh out of school and coming out there with that document. You're kind of putting yourself as a much more competitive person than someone who comes out and just says, hey, I love video games. It's like, well, good deal, right? But quite honestly, no one cares, unfortunately, right? You got to show that you want it. You got to show that you care about it, that you're creative, that you're thinking of new ways to create video games, and being proactive in creating these games design documents is what they're looking for, right? They want to see that you're thinking forward and you're being active in the community and you're very interesting and dynamic about this, right? So that is a huge element that you guys can really kind of capitalize on, even if you don't win. Now, obviously, if you win, then you get to put it on your resume and be like, hey guys, oh, sorry, CV is the way you guys say it here. I apologize. So when you guys are talking about, your performance, you can show them and look, hey, I've done these really great things. You guys should participate in it, right? Check it out, be engaged, okay?
We've just got one question. So David's just asked, we're not actually creating the game, and that's right, Andrew, isn't it?
That's correct. You're not actually creating the game. Now, if you do go on and create the game, wow, well done, right? Because creating a video game is an incredibly painful process. So you don't need to create the video game itself. We're more interested in focusing in on your thinking and your design ideas because creating a video game is a lot of work. So we're not expecting you to do that in the short time that we have for our competition. If you decide that you do, we'll shout from the rooftops and probably give you a lot of attention, though. Okay, so last year's winners. The overall winner was a company, a game design called Miraclaw. It was a very exciting, different approach, different things. As we mentioned earlier, Grim Bones had an amazing game mechanic and really well designed. Good job, Clara. The different video games that are out there, like there's so many different concepts, right? Like as you can see on here, that there is amazing components from each thing that the game designers loved, right? And we're talking about the pros, the guys that are working, getting paid for these things. They thought these different things were amazing, right? And they liked the different elements of it, and they loved the story behind it and the creativity. And so you can be making a game about a cat, you can be making a game about, you know, the end of the world, or you can come up with something that's really creative and be like looking at different ways to create a fun and exciting story, right? So, for example, Clara's design document. So well done. But yeah, so I mean, like these are just different elements, right, that you guys can play to. You don't have to stick to one specific approach, right? If you really are into like anime and you want to make a video game about anime, that's you. Go for it. Like, we're excited. We don't have any judgment against that because we work across so many different things. If you want to do like a, you know, city builder economy game, fine, right? Like, that's your choice, right? There's so many different options out there that we're excited to see your creativity and what ideas you can come up with. Let's see. So in the coming weeks, we have a couple people that are going to be speaking. The first one is a games designer that actually works in the industry. They're going to tell you what it's like to design video games and what's that process. The second one is a 3D artist / technical artist, the person who comes in and actually does like the graphic design, as you see in the top right hand corner, where they make the character and they shade them and make them like however they, you know, whatever the model is, they make that. The developer, someone who's like actually a coder and spends the time creating the logic in the background so that they can figure that out. And then the games design competition judging itself. Obviously, when you guys are all finished your documents, we're going to set that deadline and we're going to say, okay, let's do the judging, and we'll share who the winners are and the honorable mentions for what categories they succeed in. So there's a lot of things that are coming up, but this is the part that I need your help in, guys. What element of the video game industry do you guys want to learn about, right? Because I can go find people, but you know, you're gonna have to tell me, like, what do you want? Like, who do you want to hear from? Is it a specific place? Is it a specific video game? I mean, I can try. I don't know if, like, you know, GTA is gonna respond to me, but I can try. So you guys have to tell me what you're interested in and what element of maybe the career that you're interested in that I can go find someone to help with. So I'm going to turn it over to you guys and say, what kind of questions do you guys have? Is there something you want to know about? Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. So again, if anyone wants to actually say their question out loud, that's great. Or you can put it in the chat if you want to. Yeah, we've got one hand up.
Go for it, bud.
Andrew, going back to the previous question that I asked before, what would be your dream company to join?
I guess if I had to pick a video game company, I really like Blizzard for their work. I also like Valve for their work. So to me, those two companies are pretty cool. I think that they're very exciting and very fun companies that are doing interesting and exciting things. I love Steam for what they've done with creating like a platform that makes it easy for people to go access video games. So I really like them. And then as for Blizzard, I love the story behind it. Like, I play Warhammer a lot. So I think it's really cool what they've done in creating like beautiful art, beautiful story, really deep and exciting stories. And they're actually based in Texas, where I'm originally from, or at least part of the Blizzard office is in Texas. So I kind of like that as well. So yeah, I'd say those are my two companies that are jumping out at me right away. But there's no judgment against any of the other companies. I think they're really exciting groups. And then I see Nicole says, what are certain things that they're looking for in a concept designer coder? So they're very different jobs. So a concept designer is looking for, you know, kind of the element of, I guess, really unique and original ideas, right? Is that's what they want to see, is that you're thinking creatively, that you're thinking in ways that are not defined by current video game standards, right? So I think that in this whole process, there are going to be areas where they want to see originality. And for coders, in some ways, it is as well. As they want to see that you're actually very well structured, very, very organized. But I honestly, the best person to answer that will probably be the guy or guy or gal who will be speaking on the developer session in, I think it's the end of the month. So I think that would be the 24th. So we can save that question for them as well. David says, what role do you think has the most pressure in creating video games? You know, honestly, in a video game company, all of the roles are very high pressure because that's the industry as a whole, right? So when you're working on a video game, it's pretty big deal. Like the deadlines are pretty stressful. So imagine if you were running Fall Guys, right? And you were running an online server for it and everyone's playing the video game. And then suddenly there's this big bug that just launches and like it just messes up everything. All the people online are like on Twitter going like, hey guys, why is your game not working? And then you get all these tickets coming in. So you start getting pressure from everybody. One, the coder is starting to stress because they have to go find the problem, right? The salespeople are all saying, hey guys, your video game's broken. We're not making money because no one's playing, right? So Fall Guys makes most of their money from you like buying skins and those kind of things, right? So if PUBG goes down, the finance guys are like, why are you not fixing this? Like they're pressuring and knocking on your door and they're like, hi, why is this not fixed, right? And so management's getting pressured, marketing's getting pressured, the game designers are probably getting pressured because honestly, the game designer's job doesn't stop when you just, design the game. It's not over, right? Like after that, you have to continue to create new and exciting things. Like the PUBG guys, they're constantly working to like put out new content, right? There's no way they can just stop. So it's a very high pressure industry. So you have to kind of be comfortable working at a fast pace. So if you're not comfortable doing that kind of thing, this might be a place where you need to think intently about how do you want to make your own personal work-life balance work in the video game industry, because it's quite a challenge, right? Some people don't get to have as much balance.
Andrew, can I just ask a follow-up question to that? So is it quite easy to sort of move around in the industry? So once you've got that first experience to be able to move on to another game, another company?
Great question. So it's kind of like most other industries in the sense that if you work for a really like cool brand name, right, then people tend to like perk up a little bit and pay attention. So it tends to be that people, when they're first starting out in their careers, they'll join a company that has a really big brand name. And then from that point, then it's quite easy to move around. Now, that's not the defined path. If you go to a company that doesn't have a big brand name and you're just really good at your work and you get great performance reviews and you design amazing things, or you create or write or any of these things, like all the different jobs, and you build a portfolio that shows that, hey, I really am doing something great, it will be easy for you to move through your career into different places. You don't get stuck at one place usually, because the video game industry, there's a lot of movement and it's not one specific place that you need to go to.
Thank you. Right.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, Nicole's asked a couple of questions. Yeah.
Yeah, does a company value variety in skills, or would they prefer mastery in a specific genre? So there isn't really a mastery in a specific genre, right? So if you make horror video games, or if you make like racing video games, it does help if you have experience making racing video games, if you're going to another racing video game company, right? Because then obviously you've got some kind of background and history in it. If that's your thing and you only love racing video games, by all means, become a master at it. Go in and learn and create new exciting racing games. If you're interested in working across a lot of different ones, no one's going to judge you, right? There is no criticism of that. Most people will say, well, what kind of experience do you have for that? So you have to kind of sell yourself a little bit every single time. It's not going to be something that you can just automatically say, hey, I made a great shooter video game, now I'm going to go make a great racing game. It doesn't really work like that. It's not an automatic win, right? Like if you're good at baking, you're not suddenly good at drawing, right? It doesn't work that way. They're slightly different skills. Is there a specific university course you should make yourself more desirable to employers, or do they value the experience regardless taking creative computing game design over computer science? I think people are looking for a variety of things. So when you're getting hired for a job, specifically in the video game industry, it's really important to show that you've got experience in creating things, which is kind of why the video game design competition is what came about. Because if you show that you've created things and put things down on paper and taken initiative to do something, whether or not you're going to university or if you're training at home, that's how you make and define your video game success, right? Because I know people that have gone in and gone to Oxford and then gone to do video games. And then I know guys and gals that have gone into just taking online courses and then make their own very successful video game on the mobile app. And that's all they do, right? And that's it. They've never taken a university course in their life, and that's just how they approach it. Now, obviously, there's a value to going to university, right? Because going to university gives you a defined, very clear, hey, I did this. I showed that I have the capability to think at this level, to address these issues, and to build creative solutions. That's an amazing thing that goes on your CV. You don't have to go that route, right? It's not as easy, right? It's definitely not going to be an easy, oh, boom, boom, I'm going to go create a video game at home and it's going to be fine. It's very challenging to make a video game at home. It's also very challenging to kind of do that on your own. So going to different university programs can be extremely helpful to you because, as we had mentioned in this video game design competition, you want to work with other people to create this. It makes your life easier and makes it a more dynamic and interesting video game because you get different perspectives and creative ideas that come into your video game. So working by yourself is quite stressful, right? It can be very hard on your personal mental health because you spend all this time working on this product and you're like, why is it not selling? Why is it not going out there? Why is it not really popular? And that can be very stressful, right? So the career paths are varied. You can go the university route, you can go the college route, you can go the self-taught route. All these things are options. It's just that you kind of have to know the risks associated with it. It's a little easier to get a job when you have a university degree specifically in X, right? Because it just helps. So if you're doing, I know people that have taken literature degrees and gone into video game. I also know people that have gone in with like computer science degrees. So there's not a specific answer, right? There's unfortunately, I wish it was easier to just say, hey, you know, do this, you'll have a video game career, but not really.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just add to that. I mean, I've met quite a few people that are working in the industry, and you know, like someone could have done a history degree, and that's like, you know, if you're going to go on and make games with some sort of historical reference, I mean, that's like massively helpful, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And there's a lot of people that are like, you know, maybe they'll do like a mythology focus in history, and then they go and work on fantasy video games. You can completely do that, but it's upon you as the student, as the employee, to kind of be proactive and think, how can I create something that's really exciting for people and make a project that's worthwhile? And that's why this exercise here with the game design competition allows you to showcase that, showcase your creativity, showcase your skills, showcase your original thought, maybe your language, your own personal history. So if you come from, maybe your family comes from another country and they've migrated here and you're looking for something that's different. They had a very popular game that actually there was an announcement in the video games industry from someone who created a game that was based on, I think it was Pakistani history. And it was so cool, it was so different because all the games you see these days are all like, you know, Assassin's Creed, Vikings. And you're like, oh, that's great. I mean, I've seen this, right? You know, I know what this is about. But it's really different to see something like Assassin's Creed, you know, China, Assassin's Creed, you know, like you can get all kinds of different perspectives and interesting stories for that. So you don't have to define it by like any traditional sense. Maybe your own personal history is something that's worth talking about in your video game. Let's see, what types of programming languages must we learn to make a 3D game? You know, a lot of the guys work in Unity, but it's really about the software you use. So I'll let the 3D animator talk about themselves, but you know, I know that one of the popular ones is Blender. So you can start learning and taking some courses on YouTube about like how to get involved in the video games industry, and this kind of demonstrates that proactivity. So I'll make sure to mention this to Amar, who is leading our 3D session, and he can talk about some of the ways that you guys can get involved yourself if you want to do 3D artwork, you know, personally. Okay. And then Tayyab says, "What was your journey to the job you have now?" So yeah, no, my background is very different. I only worked in video games in my prior roles because I had originally come to London from a very different background. So this just kind of gives you an idea that you don't have to have a traditional background to come into this. So before coming to the UK, I actually opened a restaurant. And before that, I was working at a big corporation, right, working in their finance and tech team. And so that finance and tech team experience is how I was able to make the transition into the video game company here. Also working in the restaurant industry was actually something that my old bosses thought was a great thing because they wanted somebody who had this startup mentality, someone who was happy to just kind of create something from the ground up. And that's why I partnered with the video game people at my last company to help them create a monetization method for their video game. So how do you make money from this video game? And that's how I helped them, right? It's because I was working in finance and I was working with the tech people. And that was why they brought me here, because I'm a tech partner for them, but I'm working on the money side. So there's lots of ways that you can be involved in the video game industry. It's not one specific, specific answer for that. Burke, is there a restriction to what you're allowed to create in the document? Let's not do any adult content. let's keep it kind of, friendly. Other than that, I'd say there is no restriction. Be as creative as you want. And we'll be very happy to kind of explore the different ideas. So no, there's no restrictions. And Zara says, how do you come up with new and interesting game concepts? That is a great question, and that is actually in the session led by our games designer, so I'm going to leave that to him to explain. But one thing that I think that you guys all have a unique advantage is that because you are not currently working in the video game industry, you are not blinded by what they define is a good video game, right? All the people in the last competition, the games designers were all just like, wow, what is this? This is a great idea. Why didn't we think of this, right? They're just completely amazed at the creativity that you guys showed. So what I encourage you to do is look at your own experience, look at your own interests, look at your own history, look at your parents' lives, look at your friends' lives, and just think about the fun things that you enjoy. Think about the ways that you personally would like to make your stamp on the world and say, I want to create this, and I think it's really cool. That's what you can do. That's how you can create something exciting and different. How much support will we have with the games document? We lay out the instructions, I'd say, somewhat clearly in the document. If you have questions, reach out to me. That's why my email's on the screen. We'll share the PowerPoint at the end so that you guys have it. There is not any kind of specific support that we can necessarily give you one-on-one. For the games document, simply because that would be kind of unfair to the other students as well in the competition. So if you have a specific question and we think it needs to be shared with a broader audience, we will do that. If there is a particular question that you need help with, we're happy to answer. But if it kind of infringes on the fairness of the competition, we'll let you know. Any other questions? It's a lot of stuff, guys. Well done.
Excellent, exciting stuff. Hopefully everyone's just as excited. I can't wait to see these ideas. No idea is going to be a bad idea. Oh,
that's right.
Another question. Will we have access to the previous documents examples? Oh, they might be copyrighted, Clara, mightn't they?
So I think that's kind of a good question that we could possibly do. We'll see if the winners are interested in sharing. Clara's on the call now. She can give me a thumbs up if she wants to share hers or not. You don't have to do it now, obviously. It's up to you.
In some ways, I think it's like when students write personal statements for universities. I really don't like giving examples because then you don't get the ideas and the creativity. It's better to just start with your own ideas, I think, rather than be influenced by others.
I actually agree with that thing, and I think that's actually the path we're going to go with. Sorry, guys, who just vetoed the idea.
Sorry, I've ruined that.
No, I think it's a good point, right? Because I want you guys to think independently. I don't want you to be defined by what happened in the past, because quite honestly, in the video games industry, that's the biggest hurdle that games designers come up with, right? Because if you're working at a race car company before and then you move on to a new company, what's exciting is that you're at a new place, a new challenge, and a new opportunity for you to define something. You don't want to bring the racing game to, World of Warcraft necessarily. I mean, you can. Is that what you want to do? Sure, that's fine.
I think, yeah, sorry, I just think Jan's just asked about the layout for the design task. I think a lot of these questions and the whole competition will seem a lot less daunting when we share the Andrew's PDF about what you've got to produce, because it is really clear in there. So I think
Mhm.
that will take you through what the layout is for that document. So we can circulate that ASAP, I guess, can't we?
Yep, I finished
Yep.
the draft of it last night, so it should be good to go. So
Brilliant.
what we'll do is the deadline might not be accurate on there, so apologies.
Yeah,
Joanne, we can chat about that in a second. But we will share this document with you ASAP. And then by the time the next session comes up, which is on the 3rd, Dave, who's leading our games design and actually has seen this document before, he knows what's in it, he knows what's going on. He can give you guys a great answer as to what's in the games design document and how to make it like really punchy.
Is there anything else that anyone else you'd like to hear from, or any other topics that you think that we'd like to cover? Because I say, with the deadline is going to be influenced by that, really, because if we're going to squeeze in a couple more sessions, then obviously that's going to push the deadline back a little bit. So
I am going to try to add an animator session, just as an FYI. Okay. So I just spoke to someone today who's interested in kind of sharing their experience in animation. So let me see if I can find that person, and then we can go from there. How do I say your name by it? Is it Imtiaz?
It's Imtiaz.
Imtiaz, good to meet you, man. Go ahead.
What's the purpose behind Blender? I've heard of it used in the game industry. What is it?
Yeah, it's to help you do the 3D modeling, actually. It's to help you make the characters and the actual visuals that you see in the game.
And you said there's YouTube. If they search on YouTube, they can find tutorials on Blender, can they?
Yeah, honestly, like every element of the video game industry can be self-taught. And I mean this genuinely. Like, you can go find literally every component of the video game industry online and find kind of cool resources for it. So if you're a person who's like, you know what, I'm just going to go ahead and get started and just do it, like, do it. Right? Seriously, there are a lot of resources on there, and we'd like to make sure you get to hear all the different things. And Clara says she wants to hear from everyone. Okay, we'll do it. We'll get everybody. We'll try to get everybody and see what we can do to connect you guys with all the different resources that are out there. And we'll try to pull together like a list of really cool resources by the end of the program, so that you guys can go into this document and say, okay, if I want to do this, I'll do this, and we'll try to get that together. Okay.
And one other thing that I can easily organise is if students would want to hear from perhaps particular universities about their creative computing courses, it'd be really easy to get, I'm sure, a university in to sort of talk about their courses if you wanted to do that at university. But obviously, like we've said, you don't have to do that.
Unfortunately, there is not a website for this because I just kind of put it together, guys. Sorry about that.
This is our Candy exclusive.
What is the average wage in game development? Depends on the game development role. So unfortunately, there's no answer to that one definitively. So coding, there's a specific one. Games designers, there's one. Writers, musicians, etc. So Hamza, let me know in an email which one you're specifically looking for, and I can give you a better answer, and probably CC and Joanne. Because Joanne's actually probably got really good detailed information on different industry things. So let's see what we can find and throw together for you, okay?
Cool. So we're going to see Andrew again. Is it next week? I've lost track. We've got so many things going on. Just perhaps if we just take this one last, and if anyone thinks of any other questions, I can find out from Andrew. But we have got one more question here. So if we work in a group, how do we submit the final piece of the design? So you submit one document. So you're working on the document together.
Yep. You put the name all in one document, like of all the contributors, and then you submit it at the end to the email on the screen. It's also in the document, so the instructions will all be there. There is no group limit. If you want to build a small company, please build a small company. I support you. I believe in you. And heck, maybe if you build a small company, maybe I'll invest in you. So you guys just let me know what you guys think of, okay? Very excited for it. Very happy to see all of you. There's a lot of folks on the call. Good luck, have fun, GG all. I'm sure it'll be really great and you guys will do good things. Send me an email if you have questions, and I will see you next week. So don't worry if you can get all the information. Excellent. Thanks very much, Andrew. Yeah, so see you next week.
Sounds
good. Bye, everyone.